evening and welcome to the official action meeting of the Board of School Directors for the North Penn School District. Tonight we will be voting on a series of items that we previously discussed at the work sessions. Tonight we are videotaping, as usual, this meeting for play later on the Community Cable Channel TV. Those people wishing to speak during the audience of citizens will first be recognized by me, and then you come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and then you may state whatever you have to speak about. Please limit your comments to 5 minutes. I'll give you a little sign when your time is up. If you are not finished speaking at that point, you may leave the podium and come back after everyone has had a chance to speak for the first time. We'll continue to do that until everybody's had a chance to say everything that they have to say. So could you now stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on the agenda is approval of minutes. I'm going to table that so that we can have the proclamations first. So we'll do that, and then we'll get into the business part of the meeting. So, Mr. Ware, would you assist me, please?
It's my pleasure to assist Mr. Bowman and to introduce the students who are being honored here tonight. We have invited 7 students to attend the meeting tonight for recognition. These students are being honored as semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program. In the past 10 years, North Penn has had 79 students so honored, and most all of them have gone on to become finalists. Approximately 15,000 high school seniors nationwide have been designated as semifinalists in the National Merit Scholarship Program from a field of more than 1 million. Semifinalists are the highest scoring program participants in each state, representing about half of 1% of the state's seniors. These academically talented students will have an opportunity to continue in the competition for 6,700 merit scholarships worth over $26 million to be awarded next spring. Each of the students will be receiving a proclamation which is basically the same. Of course, it's customized, naming the student. I'll read the proclamation only once, since each student will be receiving a copy thereof. Whereas many North Penn School District students individually and collectively perform distinguished service to their school in many activities, and whereas the reputation and image of the North Penn School District is built and enhanced by the performance of its faculty and students, and whereas the accomplishments of individual students in academic, artistic, athletic, leadership, literary, and musical endeavors bring positive community interest in school programs, and whereas the future of any community rests in the hands of its responsible youth, and then the student is named and the accomplishment is acknowledged. I would like to call the students to come forward. I'll read their names in alphabetical order. If they're present, would you come and stand with Mr. Bowman, please? Lois Ahn, Kathleen Brish, Anna Davitt, Torian Howe, Jeffrey Shea, Cheryl Skrizat, and Michelle Sumler. I introduce you to some of our finest students. month, we expect to welcome a larger number of students because we should have the names of those commended students by National Merit for introduction to you at the next meeting. Thank you.
Why don't we take a 5-minute recess, and that way the rest of the board members can congratulate our students. Okay, we'll reconvene. Is there a recommendation for approval of the minutes for our 682nd meeting held on August 18th?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Allen. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll now move on to committee reports, facilities, buildings, and grounds. Tom?
Okay, the two elementary schools, Bridle Path and Walton Farm, opened on time. And that, congratulations and thanks go to Art Wood, John Strobel, and the rest of their staff. They did an excellent job. Anybody who was involved with the move knows that Art, John, their whole staff were there over the weekend, putting in many long hours, and really not asking much in return, and they did an excellent job. Moving on to Penndale. As if anyone's driven by there, they can see that the site improvement work has begun. The work has begun on the retention basin, and now they are in the process of building the new bus circle. And we are waiting right now for the architect Wormcastle to get back, to get the final bid list to go out, because we want to proceed with that as soon as possible, and we really need to keep pressure on Mr. Wormcastle to keep that going. That's all I have as far as facilities update. I would like to make a comment on a letter that all fellow board members did receive. It was a letter that was sent to Mr. John Strobel from Lieutenant Governor Mark Singal. Basically, the letter explained that there was going to be a check in the amount of $8,857 from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to North Penn School District. And it was all due to the fact that John Strobel had the insight and the knowledge to take the time and file for some federal emergency management agency funds, and he was successful in doing that, and I want to congratulate and thank him for doing that. No thanks to anybody else here but to John Strobel, because he did an excellent job. I might add, Art just put, as we all enjoy a delightful fall weather, which it has been nice, but think about that cold winter we had, and it was a rough winter, and
Related to that.
it's supposedly going to be a rough winter coming up, too. You read the Farmer's Almanac. That's all I have.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions for Tom?
No, President Bowman, in light of all the committee reports to come up, I'm not too sure where to place this, and I believe that facilities is the best place, but I would be seeking your support and the support of the board to place a serious discussion on referendum no later than the December work session of the 94 year. There's many questions that have come up as to the legality, and we need to address those concerns with the solicitor. And while we are on a fact-finding expedition right now in regards to the second high school, as it's currently proposed, we're getting the PEL studies, the enrollment studies, a financial forecast. I believe all the board members need to be educated by the solicitor and by the laws that pertain to referendum and put us all on the same page. And I think the only way to do that to benefit not only ourselves but also the community is to put it on a serious work session agenda. I would move for a discussion of referendum to be had no later than December 94 work session.
Is that a motion, or just a suggestion that we want to do it?
That's a move, because I am seeking the support of all of you to have that serious discussion in December.
I don't know if that's in order during this, if that would be something for other business, I think at the end, isn't it, versus the work session?
I gave that consideration too, but if there are residents that wish to add comment to that of the audience as citizens, by putting it at other business before the treasurer's report, it would preclude that.
It can come during this part. We can vote on things during the committee reports. That's not a problem. I'm questioning whether we need to actually vote on having a referendum discussion.
Well, then I would
ultimately have to vote on, if it were to come up for a vote, we'd have to vote on it to get it on after Mr. Potash fills us in on the
Well,
legalities of all that.
since you as board president and the superintendent design the agendas for work sessions, and I'm beseeching you to place it on that work session agenda in December.
My concern is that we have the PEL data coming
Right.
to us next month,
Right.
at which point we need to look very closely at those numbers and decide whether the new high school is the way to go based on
Right.
those numbers, or if there's some other alternative. And if that's the case, if we do need it, once again delaying till December to discuss it now puts us in problems with all of our Plan Con A and B and things
Well,
like
then,
that.
Dick, I wasn't clear, because as I mentioned, we are now seeking information. I need from now until December for the solicitor and those directly involved in this to also seek more information. We need from the solicitor maybe a more clear understanding of the documents he has presented to us, kinds of referenda, binding, non-binding clarifications, power and abilities of this board, the true role of the county officials in the process, a timetable, and maybe some discussion on the Hempfield decision or clarification from Charlie. But there needs to be opportunity to gather those facts too and give it to the board equally.
Why don't we do it for
And with the
November at the
community.
same time? We're going to have to discuss.
November will be
We're going to have
fine.
to
The
discuss.
motion should be no later than.
No
Is
later
that
than
not
December.
correct? Such as,
My point
That's
is
why I
that
said no later
we're going to have to address everything associated with the PEL numbers. What
Correct.
we have, and based on those numbers, what we're going to do. A discussion of a referendum may be OBE at that point, because the numbers don't support it. They may go
Correct.
down.
That's
In which
correct.
case, we delay our decision. I mean, no one here wants to build a high school. It's whether it's needed or not. That's the question.
Well, then I would
If
seek
it's-
your commitment to put it on a work session, and if it isn't needed, then we as a group can take it off.
Well, why don't we put on the November ballot, or in the November work session, then discussions of basic data, because we're going to get the PEL data at this meeting next month.
Why don't we
hope.
discuss it then?
That's
Okay.
my point. Why don't we do it in the 1st of November? That way we'll have a chance to get all the data and
Also,
filter it.
no one board member can direct the solicitor to do anything. The solicitor works at the behest of 9 board members. So we also need to agree that he bring forward this information and prepare to discuss it with us and with the community.
May I make 2 points, please?
Sure.
Just a clarification, the PEL information won't be in until the board action meeting in October. That would be I believe.
This meeting.
Yes, the 20th. If you want to discuss the referendum and there are legal issues, if you want to discuss that at the committee meeting, you don't have the benefit of Mr. Potash being present at the committee meeting. You may want to do this next month or November at the action meeting so that you have Mr. Potash to clarify the legal issues for you.
We definitely all have to get on the same page. When there's stories floating around, whether it's legal or not legal, we could all hear it once and for all at the same time.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we have a discussion of the PEL data and its relationship or its effect on the new high school
Right.
at the November action meeting, or November committee meeting?
Okay.
And then if we so choose at that point to hear more about a referendum, that may, like I said, it may be OBE, then Mr. Potash will be here, can give us a presentation on that, and then we can discuss it at that point.
Okay, I appreciate that very much.
Is that within the timeframes for you, Mr. Potash?
Oh, absolutely. I'll make myself available whenever you want.
Great.
Great. Thank you, President Bowman.
Let's see, any other questions for Tom or comments from the board? Community Services and Policy, Mr. Allen.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Bowman. Tonight, we are scheduled to approve the new board policy regarding family and medical leave for district personnel. Since everyone in the audience has a copy in their packet, I will not read the content. I move the adoption of board policy number 4152.4.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Engel. And he moved, so. Any other questions or comments on that? It was modified from the first reading, at my request. Any other
those
questions?
modified?
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay.
Oh,
Policy?
No, and another one. Okay. Tonight, I am also asking the board to ratify the editorial changes to Board Policy 9600 pertaining to the North Penn District Educational Foundation bylaws. The change involves the addition of language which allows for the appointment of alternates to the Foundation Board for the School District Board President, the President of the North Penn Education Association, and the administration. Ratification is required by the foundation bylaws. I move at this time to ratify the editorial changes to Board Policy 9600.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Redcamp. Is there any questions or comment?
Questions, yes. Are we voting on this at this point? Prior to any, okay, so it's not coming through the regular portion of the agenda. I did want to ask exactly what this means. We didn't have this through a committee meeting. I'd like some clarification why, what exactly this is going to involve. I also, is there in the packet
There is no
the
document.
specific change in language?
There is no document in the packet. You have a policy 9600, which is the foundation bylaws. We distributed to all board members a memo with foundation bylaws and an explanation of the language changes that we wanted. As Mr. Allen explained, the change is that instead of the board president, a representative of the board, and a representative of the North Penn Education Association, and Dr. Alcoa would appoint an administrative team person. So all of the people are presently involved in that the bylaws say that the board president will be a member of the foundation. The bylaws say that the president of the North Penn Education Association will be a member, and also that a member of the administrative staff will be a member. This is less specific, as we explained to you in our memo.
I understand that. I'm trying to understand what impact it has regarding the tenure of those that are being named as replacements. My understanding is memberships in the Education Foundation are permanent?
No.
Or are they not?
That's not true.
Okay,
Community members,
that's the language came through
community
me.
members who are members of the foundation board are appointed for a 3-year term.
Okay.
They may be reappointed for a second 3-year term, and they must rotate off at the end of the second term. Those representing the board and the district are appointed until someone else is appointed in their place, at the pleasure of the board president. If you were to adopt this language and ratify this language change as we're seeking, the board president, the NPEA president, the superintendent could name other people as decided.
Their representative.
As their representatives.
And that tenure would basically close at the time that that board president were perhaps no longer a part of this corporate body?
It could, or it would need to. There would need to be a reappointment and a reaffirmation by a new board president, I would assume. But that's an assumption on my part.
See, that's my concern. Normally, a superintendent or a board that's serving that position directly, you're automatically having the release date associated with their presence in that position traditionally. But through an appointment, I just didn't want to see a closed committee or that you'd end up with
But
someone
the board
filling in.
president nominates someone from the existing board. So if that person leaves the board, they don't stay on. If the person still stays on the board,
Okay.
then it's up to the new president to either say, yes, we want them to stay, or to assign somebody new.
Okay, within the language that was shown to me, I didn't see where there was a stipulation or confinement of who was designated to be replaced. That it could be anyone, someone out from within the community not associated. Is that language in there,
No,
Ken?
no,
Because
no,
I
no,
didn't
no,
see the
no.
language per se. I only sort of pretty much along the lines of what Bill read. That's why I wanted some clarification on the exact reading of the changes.
We'll look at that again. If that's nebulous or confusing, we will bring back different language.
Okay, I would appreciate that. I would appreciate that, to see that there's some stipulation of,
I thought it was clear, but if it is not clear, we need to look at it again.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Anything more, Mr. Allen?
No. I never report.
Elementary ed,
I didn't know report that.
secondary ed, Carmen's not here. Is there any report from her?
I have a report.
Thank you, David.
At the board committee meeting last Tuesday evening, September the 7th, the board heard a report presented by Judy Miller, principal of Pembroke Middle School, and Larry Feely, Assistant Principal of Pembroke Middle School, on the success of a pilot program conducted this past year at Pembroke in which students were assigned Saturday detention rather than in-school suspension. The administration has recommended the expansion of the program for the 1994-1995 school year to include all 4 secondary schools. The plan to implement that program was presented at the committee meeting. Based on that report, Dr. Elko has a few changes he'd like to make at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Weitz. After listening to the board and community discussion regarding the in-school suspension program, I would like to change a few of the aspects of it for this year. There were some questions about how we were going to staff it and the staffing ratios. In meeting with the secondary principals, we felt that a staff-to-student ratio of 1 to 15 would be an appropriate staffing pattern. We also, what that would do, in our opinion, would be reduce the number of teachers involved on a typical Saturday by 2 teachers. Therefore, the amount of money that we would need to budget for that would be not to exceed $9,250. There were some questions about compensatory time for those individuals. We simply do not feel that we have a viable way to provide compensatory time for teachers or administrators. We need the teachers and administrators here Monday to Friday during their regular work hours. We don't feel that we can meet the needs of this program on a compensatory time basis with our staff. So we're recommending that we modify it to a 1 to 15 ratio. Obviously, if there are less students, if we only have a few students there on a particular Saturday, Mr. Feely would be the only person responsible for the program. Thank you, Mr. Weitz.
That's the end of my report.
Thank you, David. Special Ed and Student Services, Ms. Scheer.
No report.
Okay, strategic planning, no report from that. Student Support Services, David.
Yes. At the Tuesday, September 13 Board Committee meeting, Bill Hartenstein and John Cotran presented a recommendation to implement a pilot program to place video cameras on buses for a period of 60 to 90 days at no cost to the district. If the pilot proves successful, the Transportation Department would advertise bids to equip all buses in the North Penn fleet with both live cameras and decoys at an estimated cost of $10,000. At the same meeting, Mr. Hartenstein and Mr. Cotran presented a recommendation to contract through Bucksmont Intermediate Consortium of School Districts with DrugScan Incorporated and DSI Medical Services for drug and alcohol testing. The district is required under federal law to begin testing of all bus drivers with commercial driver's licenses effective January 1st, 1995. And finally, in response to the delays encountered in bus service for non-public students, North Penn School District employees, along with representatives of Ryder Student Transportation Services Incorporated, have worked cooperatively to redesign bus routes which have functioned poorly during the first days of this school year. New schedules were distributed as needed and are being monitored daily, with North Penn and Ryder working together in order to provide the level of service that parents have come to expect. If there are any parents here tonight who wish to express their concerns, Mr. Hartenstein and I will be happy to meet with you in the conference room across the hall following the action meeting tonight. It's the end of my report.
Great, thank you, Dave. Any questions of Mr. Weitz? No, that's fine. Finance, Mr. Redkamp.
No report?
Okay, personnel, Ms. Bengal.
Mr. President, I have no report formally from personnel, but as usual, I defer to our negotiator, Fred Schmidt, in light of negotiations, if you would wish to say anything.
I don't believe so. I think we made a statement last night that we had met and for quite some time, and although it was fairly candid in the exchange, we really didn't have any movement whatever to talk about. We have scheduled again for the 12th of October.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Fred. End of report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Ms. Bengal. Any questions? Fred or Donna? Legislative, Carmen, any report from her? Anyone? Fine. No report from the MCIU, North Monco ATS.
Yes, as of last Monday, the enrollment at North Monco is 751 students. 371 are just slightly under 50% of those students are North Penn students.
Great. That's up How many percent this year?
I think we were below 500 and dropping 2.5 years ago. The number for last year at this time was a little under 600, I believe, about 580, and it's up to 751, a dramatic increase.
Ralph, how are our figures?
Pardon?
How are our figures of our students by comparison?
In actuality, our percentage over the last 3 years at North Monco has run between 45 and 48%. It's about 49% this year, slightly increased. Clearly, the largest move has been Perkiomen Valley School District, who's about doubled their number of students. They're up to 101 this year. But our percentages has actually crept up a little bit. We've always been between 45 and 50%.
Thank you.
That's great to hear. Any other questions of Ralph? Okay. Thanks. Merck, Science, David?
No report?
Yeah, Mr. Bowman.
Yeah, sure.
There is one piece of news to announce regarding Merck, and I apologize, Mr. Weitz, that this just happened the other day. Dr. Paravano, the director for the Merck Institute for Science Education, dropped in and presented me with a check for a little more than $144,000 for the year to support our science programs. That money will go to support teacher training and for the science kits at the elementary level. And next month at the committee meeting, Donna Brown and Charles Keffer will be talking about the science program. So, a piece of good news.
Yeah, that's great.
Send them our thanks.
All right, thank you, Dr. Alco. Any other committee assignments that I don't know about that we need to talk about?
Just municipal relations.
Oh.
We are meeting on September 29th. We'll be meeting with the other municipalities, 7:30, and on the agenda that night will be reassessment and just ascertaining questions in regards to Second High School, and also informing them as to the fact-finding quest we are taking here as a board with the PELs, the enrollments, and financial forecast.
Great. Thank you, Donna.
And a report on that.
Okay, no other committee reports. We'll now move on to the audience of citizens. If there's anyone wishing to speak to the board tonight, please raise your hand. I'll identify or point you out, and then you can come up to the podium and speak.
My name is Louis Grace. I live in Lansdale. If the federal government says that you must have drug testing, shouldn't they provide the money for it? I mean, it's their idea. Also, on the Merck Science, you received a check for $144,000.
That's correct, sir.
Well, they just did away with the Christmas bonus for the employees. So I wonder if that's where the money came from.
No, actually, the Merck and Company over a year ago decided to make a multi-year, multi-million-dollar commitment to improve science education nationally and set up a separate foundation separate from the operational funding for Merck Pharmaceuticals.
I was just wondering.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Grace. Anyone else would like to speak? Ma'am? Yes.
My name is Mary Martha Whitworth, and I live in Talmenson Township. I wanted to address the board members and the community members who are trying to delay the building of a second high school. What I wanted to ask you is, have you been over to the high school this fall? I have. It is packed. The halls are so crowded you can't walk in them. There are no seats in the cafeteria. You have to wait 25 minutes in line to get your lunch. Many of the students have lunch 7th period in the day, and then they go home after 8th period, so they eat next to the last period of the day, which is 1 o'clock. And these are the same students who eat breakfast at 6:15 because the bus comes at 7, and they eat lunch at 1 o'clock. There are many, many closed classes, which means if a student wants to take a class that's listed in the catalog, they can't get in because it's already closed, it's full, and there's no other teacher available to offer it again. My son was closed out of a class that he's been waiting 3 years to take, and now he can't take it because he's a senior and the class is closed. The guidance counselors have full loads. The senior guidance counselors already had a full load, and senior year guidance counselors work very, very hard because they have all the college things and the work, getting work placements and things. They're overloaded anyway, and now they've each been assigned 40 sophomores on top of the seniors that they have. So now they have 40 sophomores to counsel in addition to the seniors. Study halls are being held in lecture halls, and so that we'll have fewer teachers have to supervise them because there are not enough teachers to go around. There are 29 students in most classes, and if you've ever tried to supervise 29 students in a science lab, it's impossible, much less teach them, just supervise them. We train our teachers to use the latest and best educational techniques like cooperative learning, hands-on learning, and then we put so many students in their classes that they can't use these techniques, which is just wasting the training money that we've given them. It's my understanding that the functional capacity of the high school is supposed to be 2,600 students. Right now, there are over 2,400 students at the high school, and in my opinion, it's already way beyond capacity. Based only on the present enrollment in grades 7 through 12, assuming that not one more student moves into this district, which is highly unlikely just from the building going on in my township, next fall, the high school enrollment will be 2,600 students, which is capacity. In the fall of 1996, it will be over 2,700, and in 1997, it will be over 2,800, which is way over capacity. That's only in the next 3 years. Beyond that, it gets even worse. Where are you going to put all those students? They're not going to fit. We don't need any more statistics. We don't need any more projections. We don't need any more discussions. We need a second high school now, today.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
My name is Monica Cribo, and I live at 805 Sullivan Drive on the Fox Ranch Farms across gate number 3 of Merck Sharp and Dome. My 2 children, second graders and fifth graders, and several other children from the development attend Corpus Christi School in the North Penn School District. Earlier this year, the school district informed us of their decision of hiring a carrier, another carrier to transport children of private and parochial schools. They hired the Ryder Company. After scheduling all the stops, the Ryder Company deemed our area unsafe and provided 2 stops in our development. This was publicly announced during the middle of the summer. The 2 first weeks, of course, we had the delays of the drivers not being familiar with these routes, but the schools stopped at the designated area. Last week, Mr. Harsenstein, the district, under Mr. Harsenstein's direction, suspended these 2 bus stops. Now, I am here as a working mother. These past 2 years have been an absolute stress in our lives with a juggle of taking the kids to and for school. I personally had to put them in the YMCA for the before and after school care. This has cost me over $3,500 a year. This amounts to close to 8,000 years, money that I should be putting away for my children's college education. I don't know the requirements of the public school, but Corpus Christi is very demanding on homework. My fifth grader has at least 1 hour of homework. That means that he has to bring textbooks home. This means that the school bag is very heavy. In addition to the news that we were providing transportation, as I am switching my children from the North Penn Aquatic Club to the YMCA. Now, without transportation, this means that my kid has to walk 1.5 miles with his heavy backpack, with a bag carrying sneakers, a change of clothes, a towel, swimsuits, And in addition to these, they are going to start band next week. So he has to carry that also. I have called the school to ask if any sixth graders could walk with my children. And there are no children that are walking from my development. I have asked the taxi company to pick them up. The taxi company is very busy during that time and carrying other children that are very unhappy with the bus schedules. I can't be in a pool because I leave work, I commute to Philadelphia, and I leave work at 6:30 in the morning. That means that I can't help the other mothers, plus they're already carrying other children. So I think that the school board is out of touch with the needs of a working parent. And I am asking you, sir, to reinstate those 2 buses. The buses are provided, the routes are accessible, the money is allotted for it. There is no reason why you cannot provide those 2 buses. Plus, my children have to walk 1.5 miles without adult supervision until they cross to Corpus Christi, where there is a guard there. This is unacceptable for me and for parents that live in that development. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scarlett. Any other people that wish to speak? Ma'am in the red there, lady in the red.
Thank you. My name is Eleanor Laurie O'Cotney. I live in Montgomery Township. And I'd like to speak tonight concerning the establishment of a second high school for the North Penn School District. So much of the discussion in the North Penn Reporter and on the street corners while we're waiting for the buses with our children has centered on what the residents of Montgomery Township want, as if that were something significantly different than what the rest of the residents of the North Penn School District want. I think that what we should all want is an education equal in quality for all of the students of this district. We have also heard over and over again about the excellence of the education currently offered in this school district. We know that this perceived excellence is at least partly responsible for driving the high property values that we enjoy in this area. It is in our mutual best interest to keep our standards and our property values high. My question is, how long can we maintain true excellence in an atmosphere of overcrowding and large class size, or how large is too large for a high school? Surely there is a point where the number of students causes an inevitable loss in the program quality, and there is a point where the sheer volume of students causes a loss in the personal contact between teachers, administrators, and students that enhances the educational experience in many tangible and intangible ways. And there is a point where large numbers of students will cause competition for spots and activities where limited spaces are available. This kind of competition will choke off opportunity for many students. If we don't think that new students are coming, why is Bridle Path Elementary School already bursting at the seams? There are 75 more homes being built in my neighborhood alone in an area that was assumed to be built out. The rest of Montgomery Township, Upper Gwinnett, and Towmention Townships are also experiencing significant development. I believe it is in our best interest to build a second high school now, to prepare for the future, and to assure that we can continue to provide the quality of education that we currently offer. Thank you.
Gentleman in the back there.
My name is John Fisher, 1453 Cathy's Lane, North Wales, Pennsylvania. Lifelong resident of Lansdale, graduated the class of '66 of North Penn High School. And I'm speaking against a second high school. And I know that may not be very popular, but I think one of the most divisive things that we could do to the North Penn Valley at this time would to build a competing educational institution when we have such a fine original institution that has traditions and has value and has received all kinds of awards. Now, there are some things we have to face as facts, and all of these people that have been speaking about a second high school and the things I've read so far point to the fact that we do have a space problem in the North Penn district. In fact, we have two space problems. We have an elementary space problem, and we have a secondary space problem. And Mr. Keffer, when he made some of his original reports to the board, actually would have liked to have built 3 elementary schools And the numbers probably would, in good wisdom, show that that would have been a wonderful thing to do, but it was just too much for our community to hit at one time. We do have some elementary schools that are crowded to capacity already, and we do have projections from some sources that show that it will be even worse in the future. And what the people say about the high school and the other areas of our district are correct. There is crowding. So we got to fill up a space problem, and so I think we have to do some building. I've already built 2 elementary schools, and I think the time to build elementary schools has stopped. I think that our board ought to look at some other alternatives, and I think one of them would be to reconfigure North Penn High School and not consider it just a 10 through 12 school, but to consider it a 9 through 12 school, as many of our surrounding districts do. Case in point, my 9th grader was on the 9th grade football team. Now, he couldn't put pads on until the 3rd day of school, while all his competitive teams that are in 9 through 12 systems could scrimmage with the varsity. There are a lot of sports and other academic reasons why if we were a 9 through 12 comprehensive district, our district would have many more opportunities. Well, it may sound foolish. Well, where are you going to put this 9 through 12 school? Because our current site cannot handle those numbers, and all the studies that have been done so far have shown that. What we could do is we could take our current, and it is past, our past high school, the Penndale Complex, which we are already revamping, and make that a junior varsity campus of the North Penn Comprehensive High School. Making that the 9th and 10th center, you'd have the 11th and 12th grade, and maybe some intercross in between putting some 9th graders at the high school or 10th graders at the current high school site. A lot of flexibility there, and you could arrange it so we now have a 9 through 12 high school. Well, what are we going to do with the space that's already there? Here's the solution to that. Build another middle school. And if we build another middle school, we should do it on the land that we have already purchased out on Keenest Road. If you build a middle school there, and you have a middle school at Pembroke, and you have a middle school out in Hatfield Township, you have at all 3 corners of our district sites for a middle school education. Now, there's a little personal history here. I have been a 6th grade teacher in the North Penn District for years, and I really never was happy with the idea that our 6th graders had to go back to the elementary schools. But it was necessary, and it was necessary because there was no other way to do it to be able to fill our elementary schools we were building. Now, if we were to take the 6th grade and move them back into the middle schools, as almost every place in the nation they are doing with middle schools, we could have 3, 6, 7, 8s, our current K-5, a 9-10 junior campus, and a 11-12 senior campus. We'd probably save ourselves millions of dollars, have a better educational program, but most of all, we would have a unified North Penn Valley with a single high school, continuing on the traditions of the great school we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher. I'd just like to point out, though, to you that the North Penn, or the Penndale Middle School will not hold the 2,000 students that we currently have in the 9th and 10th grades, or expected to have there.
Then put some of them at the North Penn High School building, because if you have a comprehensive
Is there-
high
is
school,
there-
you go that way.
Is there other people? Yes, sir.
My name is Richard Lowasser. I'm a resident of Lansdale. I'd like to address the non-public school busing briefly. St. Stanislaus is also on the rider transportation system now. And we, like the other schools, have been having some problems with pickups, stops, and dropping off of students. Recently they just revised the bus schedule, which took care of some problems, but we also still have a lot of problems. One of them is the drop-off time of our students at the school. The bell rings at 8:45 at our school, and we only have one bus getting there 5 minutes before the schedule. Every other bus is getting there at 8:44, 8:43, 8:45, 8:42, 8:41. One bus gets there at 8:37. It's not really a lot of time to give a student, especially elementary level, a minute or 2 minutes to get to their classroom from the bus at drop-off time. We would like to see an effort being made to make the drop-off time earlier if possible. Also, with the new revised bus schedule, we have multiple stops on the same route being picked up at the same time, which is impossible. You can't pick up 4 students from 3 different sites at the exact same time when they're a few blocks away. That was the new bus schedule that was handed out. And we'd like to see that addressed. Also, we'd like to know if the in-camera system that they're talking about for the buses would include the rider system. No, it would not? No. Is there any projection for it to cover that? Because your proposal says to ensure the safety of all students in the district. And our students are considered to be in your district. And we'd like to have the same safety provided to them, because the non-public schools have the same problems in the bus as the public schools do. You have little kids riding with big kids, you have big kids fighting and doing all kinds of stuff, and we'd like to see their safety in consideration also. Thank you.
Mr. Bowman, if I can just say something quickly. As Mr. White's mentioned earlier, he and I would be very happy to meet with the parents, especially from St. Stan's, after the action meeting. I met with the principal of St. Stan's this afternoon and outlined for her the steps that we feel we can take to correct the situation. And I don't want to take the community's time right now to outline that, but I'd be very happy to sit with Mr. Lalosser and the rest.
We pay taxes here.
Absolutely, absolutely. But what I would like to do, if you do have the time at the end of the action meeting, I will sit and go over step by step what it is we propose to do, and I'd be happy to do that. Okay.
Why don't you want it on the record? Is there a specific reason?
None. If we want to take the time to do it, I can do it now.
We'd like to hear it on the record.
We can do it after the audience of citizens. If you can, I mean,
that's good for everyone.
If there's a specific number of people here that want to hear that, I think, because there's, in terms of questions and things, this is our action meeting, so we have business to conduct.
I think if it's a question.
This is part of your business.
I think the parents of St. Stan's, Mr. Bowman, are entitled to an explanation.
I think so, too.
But at the same time, as far as you're concerned about being on the record, Mr. White's is already offered to be there, and your remarks will be on, or concerns will be on the record with the board.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in the middle?
I'm Lori Anderson. I live in Montgomery Township. 2 thoughts about the second high school and the conflicts that have rearisen. $41 million sticks in my throat, probably as much as anyone else. That's one heck of a price tag. What frustrates me as a parent, as someone who pays an awful lot of taxes in the district, though, is to hear all of the people saying, we're not going to spend it, we're not going to have the second high school, no, no, no. It's very easy to vote against something. What I encourage the board and the community to do is what that gentleman did a little earlier, is to come up with the creative solutions. Put something out there that we can discuss, that we can talk about, that we can work with, so we have a solution to the problem. Given the information we were given last year, I supported the second high school. If the majority of the community feels that they can't afford that, this is a democracy. I will go with the majority of the community. But I can't stand listening to this negative, no, no, no stuff without somebody coming forth with a positive idea about how we're going to educate our children properly. Also, I want to comment just real quickly about this perception, this incorrect perception that it's Montgomery Township against the world. I'd love to know where that got started. Whomever started it, I invite you to my home right now. Have coffee with me, have coffee with my neighbors. We earn money, our husbands go to work, the wives go to work, we pay a lot of taxes. Nobody wants to mow the lawn. We're normal North Penn citizens, just like the rest of you guys. We all want our kids educated in North Penn. None of us want to have to choke on taxes. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? Gentleman in the back.
My name is George Edwards. I'm from Talamanson. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that the present high school is there and an addition can be built to it. Is that true or not? The reason I'm asking, if it's true, wouldn't all the tradition remain there? And wouldn't it be a lot cheaper? And wouldn't we still have one high school instead of two? Can an addition be built to this school?
Yes.
And has it been considered?
It was considered during the task force that met for over a year of one of the options that we had that was presented to the board. It was ruled out due to various reasons, and in fact, the task force recommended a new, larger high school. The board then took that and said, looked at all the data and made a decision that it would be a smaller high school as a preferred option over an expansion of the existing high school, or any other of the myriad of different ideas that were proposed. In fact, I think it was Mr. Fisher that recommended a grade realignment. That was in there too.
Well, there's certainly, excuse me, there's certainly plenty of room to put an addition on that school, is there not? And there's plenty of property there.
Actually, not in terms of the fields and things that would be then eaten up by parking lots. Expansion of the parking lots and the buildings would then make the campus too compact to do all the necessary athletics and things on the campus.
Well, if you put an addition, for instance, according to Time Magazine, U.S. News and World, whatever I read, the average family now is 1.7. So 10, 15 years from now, won't there be fewer children going to the high school, even though this is being built up in this area?
That's what we're trying to find out from the Pennsylvania Economy League studies of projections of what the expansion of education or the number of students that we expect to have over the next 15 years.
But it's definitely been ruled out that you cannot put an addition there.
No, it was not ruled out.
Okay.
It was just, that was not the preferred option at the time.
Okay.
If we get the results back from the study that say there's not as the expected number of students that we had projected last year, in other words, if that number that peaks out in the early 2000s at around 3,500 or 3,400 and something in the high school 10 to 12, if that changes and goes down, then the board may want to reopen and re-examine some of those other ideas that maybe didn't quite stretch far enough at that point to meet those numbers. That's what will be readdressed once we've received the information from the PEL.
Don't you think if you did build an addition onto that school, you could probably do it for half than what you would do for a new school?
I couldn't speculate right now at that, and I don't remember based on the
I think
data.
those numbers were published when we were studying it, and it's that isn't even, it's not like half. It was considerably different than that. We'd have to get you the numbers, but they are available and were published at the time.
Okay.
There's a problem for people that have talked to me. I see people in the supermarket and everywhere else that say, why don't you do that? And that's fine. It's not just a matter, though, unfortunately, of putting some more classrooms on. It impacts the core facilities, the gyms, the cafeteria, where now have to be expanded also, because right now, the cafeteria, for example, you heard a lady, we have 4 periods of lunch. Some students eat at 1 o'clock. It's not very good. If we were to expand that further, now we'd have to expand the cafeteria in addition to putting more classrooms. And you can only put so many children in a gym class, and there's only so many periods that you can have gym. Therefore, now you need some other gym facilities. And gym is a mandated subject by the state for all 3 years. So all the students must take gym. So now you run into a problem as and these are all the things that were brought out by the task force during our review that said why it was not an acceptable option or not the preferred option.
Well, couldn't you build another cafeteria in the addition?
Well, sir, this isn't time to debate the new high school or the second high school. your concerns are very valid, and it's something that we will look at once we know how many students we have to educate in the coming years.
He needs to be sure we're going to revisit these.
We are. That's what I just told him. Anyone else? Here on the left.
My name is Bob Graziano from Tolminson. I have several items here. One of them, I promise you, is not the high school. First thing I'd like to do is reiterate what Mr. Clemens said, congratulate Art Wood and his staff for the fine job they did on the new schools. I live in the Gristmill Run development across the street from Walton Farms, and we watched that right from the beginning, and it was quite an effort. Also, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Keffer and his staff. I went to the school the Saturday before it opened, actually looking for Mr. Wood to see if there was any way I could help out in those last couple of days. Unfortunately, I didn't find him, but I did see a lot of the teachers there, and they were just about done decorating their classrooms and getting ready. And I think they did a very professional job, and I think you ought to be proud of them. The district ought to be proud of them. As I said, I live in the Gristmill Run development, and we also have a bus problem. It's not a major problem compared to what it sounds like the rider problem is, but I've spoken to Mr. Cotran, and he's been very cooperative and told us of some of the problems and the other priorities. And I know Mr. Hartenstein is familiar with the problem from the article in the newspaper. I understand you have the rider problems, and you have the new schools, the two new schools. We do live 5 minutes away from that school, and our kids are getting home about 45 minutes after school ends.
Let me interrupt you. Beginning tomorrow, your children will be home within 2 to 5 minutes.
That's terrific.
The bus, unfortunately, what happened when the bus exited the driveway of Walton, it was scheduled to turn left when the Gristmill area that you're speaking of is 2 minutes to the right. So the bus will circle through that cul-de-sac and come back out.
Oh, that's terrific, because we had parents going to pick their kids up and kids wanting to walk over where, of course, that's not safe at all with Allentown Road there, so thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My last item was referred to already tonight, and that's mandates. As we all know, both funded mandates and unfunded mandates are becoming a big problem in this country, and we know in the district. Next year, we have auto emissions testing being forced on us. We have employee trip reduction being forced on us. There's an effort in the country, and already 5 states have passed resolutions reaffirming the states' rights under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution to try to start fighting this problem. There was an article in today's Intelligencer about that. What I would propose is this district draft a letter and send it to our local representatives that cover this district, encouraging that effort. It's a big burden on all of us, both the school district and individually, and it's something that I think we really need to start doing as individuals and as governmental bodies. I was going to give this to Mrs. Leahy, but since she's not here, Mr. Bowen, I'll give this to you. This is the article from today's paper.
All right, thank you. She gets it. Thank you. Anyone else? I saw a hand there late. Oh, Sharice.
Good evening, Sharice Krieger from Montgomery Township. Mr. Hartenstein, I don't have a bus problem. I am here this evening to request some information in regards to the second high school, the discussion for the second high school referenda. Along with the clarification that's due this board in October by the PEL in regards to the enrollment projections, I believe that this community is also entitled to a fair and accurate look at what the financial forecast will be if we do a second high school. Up to this point, the community has been unable to get an accurate figure. Last year, when the smaller high school was approved or discussed and approved, we were told it was going to be a $35 million project. That project has now increased to $41 million project, and that is only for the land and the construction of the building. I, as a taxpayer, believe that I'm entitled to know what the full financial ramifications are for that and any other facility that this district plans to build in the future. What a lot of people in the community don't understand is our full capital bond bond indebtedness right now is $102 million. We just received an 18 mil tax increase, and that does not include what I hope is to be negotiated in a new contract for the teachers this year. I would also like to see a discussion, perhaps it can take place at Mrs. Mengel's meeting on September 29th with the other area officials. I would also like to see clarification by the Towmenson Planning Department or the Commission as to whether or not the current high school site does have a third floor that was built onto that facility in the 70s. I would like to know if there is any truth to the rumor that the staircases are in place and have been hidden by drywall since the 70s. Now, this is stuff that's going around, and it's getting to be ludicrous. So I would also like to see somebody from Towamencin here at that meeting to either dispel or whatever the rumors that are going rampant. I believe it's the community's right to know what the financial forecast is in regards to this and any other capital improvements this board plans. And to be quite honest with you, with a $102 million debt now, I don't know if I'm comfortable to allow any elected school board body decide in the future to build facilities on their own. I would like it to be my right to say yay or nay, we need that facility. Thank you.
Just to point out, Ms. Krieger, that the strategic planning process that we're embarking upon and working through will have a complete financial picture projected out through the years, but unfortunately we're not to that point yet.
I'm talking about the bottom line for the second high school.
Well,
Okay,
that ties into that whole
the
thing.
furniture, the teachers,
I understand exactly.
every piece of equipment that you need.
I know exactly what you're
This
saying.
community deserves to know that
That will be
upfront.
tied into the strategic plan. Anyone else like to speak? Hand in the back there, Mr. Kuzma.
My name is Walter Kuzma. I live in Towmencin Township. I would like to know of those school board members that are against a referendum, why they feel that they shouldn't have one.
Mr. Kuzma, we're going to discuss that at the meeting on November the. It's not appropriate to poll the board right now as to whether they're in favor of it or not. It's something that we will discuss as part of our requirements or desire to have a second high school.
I wasn't really trying to poll the board, but I do see pieces in the paper, and there are by certain ones of you that are against it. And I would just like to know why you're against it. I can name 3 members on that board whose names have been in the paper, and they already said they were against a referendum. As a taxpayer, I feel I should have a say, because all the board members that have been elected are servants of the people. You're not there to rule. You're there to do what we want you to do, whether you like it or not. You can be ousted just as easy as you got in.
No, sir, we can't. We're in for 4 years. I'm sorry.
That may be the last, too. You have many people here. First of all, out of all of you people sitting here, which one of you know how many students that school was made to accommodate when it was built? How many can it accommodate? You must have had plans for so many students, or you wouldn't have built it that big.
Mr. Kuzma, at the last board meeting, action meeting, Dr. Alco announced that the functional capacity of the school is about 2,740 students.
2640 to 2660.
That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking for how many students could it accommodate that it was originally built for?
That's your answer.
You don't know? Somebody should know on that board or administration.
There
You're
must-
not doing your homework.
There must be paperwork associated from when the school was built.
Where-
Where are the, whether it's an Act 34
If we ask the administration to bring
paper?
it to the next meeting, it
Act
was
34
brought up
papers.
and published and discussed when we were dealing with the high school
task
petition.
force,
And we can bring that up, if they want to bring that paper back out from a year ago, we can do it, but I don't think it's here tonight handy.
Where
No,
could
no,
I
no,
get
no.
the information than what it was originally built to accommodate?
No, you're misunderstanding me. Where's the beginning paperwork from 1971? You had to have a formal meeting,
That's the
something had to be
paperwork that
filed
was
with the
Put on the
state.
table a year ago.
You have that?
Discussed.
I
I
haven't
don't
That's
seen
have
in
it.
the high
It
school
was
task
presented.
force.
I didn't see the original,
Book.
not the original data. I see the estimations, current estimations for functional capacity, but I haven't seen the 1971 official Department of Ed papers.
It was presented, I'm sorry.
But I'm just saying to put this to ease, we keep hearing this debate. Let's,
Okay, the other thing is, I hear a lot of people say, oh, this school is too big. This school is too big. My son or daughter won't be able to participate. Yet, when their son or daughter graduates, they fight tooth and nail to get them in a school like Notre Dame or Penn State or Ohio State that has 30, 40, 50,000 students. Classes of 100, 150. Now, where is there? First of all, number one, when Bill Roman and I went around your school, you had 29 empty classrooms. Now, fill them up first. Thank you.
Hand in the back, I see. Warren, come on up. Come on, Dan.
Warren McNeil, North Wales. I was here when Mr. Hartenstein presented the video cameras to be placed on the buses, and I have some very strong reservations about that. He mentioned the fact that he had gotten the opinion from Mr. Potash, but I do believe that there's not been enough case law dealing with this issue because of the technology. I know the Supreme Court has dealt with 4 cases dealing with the Fourth Amendment in this, but not particularly dealing with public school buses. All those cases happen to deal with transit systems having video cameras on it. I would hope the board would delay implementation of even the test run of this until a policy is put in place. How long is the film going to be kept? Who's going to view it? And things to that nature. I did not hear anything in that presentation 2 weeks ago that dealt with that. My other reservation with this is, we're talking about 10% of the students riding the bus. Somewhere parents have to be made accountable for their children's actions. I do not expect the school district to do this all alone. They're not your children, they're our children, those of you that have children on the board. So I would hope that another management process, a decision can be made before we go down this road of putting video cameras on school buses. Because I think in a very short period of time, students will figure out which ones are live and which ones are decoys. And I would also call your attention to the School Transportation News November '93 report. Richard Tall, T-A-U-L, in Delaware, is a person who is in that article, and he does have some reservations about this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren. Bring up some good ideas. Any other people who'd like to speak?
Good evening. I'm Bill Roman from Upper Gwinnett Township. Now, I know that the school district is growing and accommodations have to be made to absorb that growth. There is a serious question, however, regarding the magnitude of that growth, as evidenced by the 319-person shortfall projected for the 94-95 PEL estimates for the school district, and the 152 shortfall for the PEL's 94-95 high school estimates. There's also a question as to the duration of that projected growth. PEL has forecasted a peak district enrollment of 14,930 in the year 2001, which is roughly 3,000 above what it is now. That's significant. Spread out over 13 grades. And a high school peaking at 3,790 in the year 2005 before it begins to tail off itself. Now, if the present shortfall continues to grow, then the need for a second high school will be pretty much eliminated. And the high school board should then address the more moderate enrollment expansion by more effective utilization of space, adding pods or modules to the existing structure. In terms of existing space utilization, get rid of the low enrollment classes, or at least most of them. This could free up as many as 10 classrooms, allowing the present facility to absorb more students. Better planning and scheduling could assure more efficient use of classrooms. No room should sit idle because it is dedicated to one instructor or one subject, and few, if any, should sit idle, regardless of the reason. A 95 to 98% utilization, room utilization, should be obtained. Modules or pods could also be used, as they are elsewhere in the district, to help deal with peak enrollments. This can be effective and certainly cost-efficient. Now, the cost of a second high school bond issue, the maintenance of the facility, and administrative costs will be high and invade the pocketbooks and lower the standards of living of the taxpayer citizens of this community. It's worth noting that in the last 7 years, the district has forced its citizens to pay $100 million above inflation and enrollment growth. That's a lot of money, and I don't think the communities funding this district have received a commensurate educational performance improvement. This realization is a reflection on the less than satisfactory performance of prior boards. Now, finally, let me note that the North Penn Taxpayers Newsletter for December will be carrying a chart which indicates that from 1960 to 1993, the CPI, which is an inflation index, will have risen by 488.2%. Medical care, about which there's an awful lot of politics going on out of Washington these days, 903.1%. Per pupil, educational costs in this country, and this comes right out of Washington, 1,360.4%, almost triple the rate of inflation. This per pupil expenditure performance implies a productivity decline of more than 2/3, even if you assume charitably that the quality of education has remained constant. In fact, official spending figures are low, excluding such key items, and this is stated by the Department of Education, as the teacher training costs, pension contributions, and the cost of some federal programs that are outside the Department of Education's control, like Head Start. Spending money does not produce quality education.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Could we please have silence in the audience so we can hear? Thank you.
Spending money, thank you, Dick. Spending money does not produce quality education, and a new high school, if it isn't going to be needed for at least 20 to 25 years, will be wasted money. There's already too much of that going on in the public education system, and I urge you to turn the clock back to a more efficient and productive era. When you, and if you are reluctant to do that, then allow the voters to do it for you through the referendum process. Thank you.
Anyone else this evening?
I'm Gary Robinson, Hatfield Township, Lincoln Party candidate for 24th Senate District. I'm rather troubled by what I hear the past year since I've started paying attention to these meetings. This conflict over this second high school. I hear statistics that both support it and work against it. Certainly, somebody has to have biased and unreliable statistics. I would really like to know, and I don't know how we're going to resolve it, of finding out which side is using biased statistics. Regardless of whether you build that school or not, we have a financial crisis facing this entire country. And it seems to be related that over the past 40 years, the more this country has spent on education, the worse the education has become. It doesn't seem that simply increasing money is going to solve the problem. These are different issues, and yet somewhat related. I think we need a real, unbiased evaluation, and what I hear about the reliability of the Pennsylvania Economic League leads me to question who and what they are and what their agenda is. Secondly, at the last meeting here in 18th of August, I asked a question concerning taxes. The entire school board has gotten a letter from me and others. I'm deeply concerned about the basis of using bonds or stocks as a way of financing government. Anyone who has studied finance and accounting clearly is aware that the basis that stocks and bonds are used as a way of financing profit-making ventures, business and industry. Since government and schools do not produce anything saleable, apparently the profits and taxes that the bondholders get are from the rest of the taxpayers. Because one of the basic principles taught about finance and accounting and bonds is the fact that bonds are backed by the unlimited taxing authority of the issuing government. If the present debt service in the North Penn School District is $102 million, and you issue a new bond of $42 million, a 40% increase, we have a problem where if our annual budget is approaching $100 million a year and our debt service is now 50% above that at 150, we have more and more real income to spend on education because more and more money is going to the profiteering of the bondholders. I think it is essential that we involve ourselves in a two-step process of resolving problems rather than the empty political rhetoric of change. Let's start correcting problems. First, let's take this unnecessary, complex, and subject to corruption, the bond method of taxation, and eliminate it. It appears what I'm looking at preliminarily, we could cut our year-to-year cash taxes for the school district nearly in half if we paid cash. And I think the people being scared by the political elite for years saying that, well, you can't afford to pay taxes, you can't build a new school, you can't pay for it cash, let's finance it, has been nothing more than a fraud and a deception meant to enslave the people to the wealthy elite. It's time we eliminate bonds, and then as we do that, maybe we can also tackle the real problem of quality education.
Thank you. Any other people wishing to speak tonight? Great. Okay, we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Mr. Bowman. We'll begin on addendum BAA1, please. I recommend the approval for the student whose name is on file in the office of the superintendent to attend.
Quiet, please. Thank you.
I recommend approval for the student whose name is on file in the office of the superintendent to attend the Central Montco Area Vocational Technical School on a tuition basis for the 1994-95 and the 95-96 school years.
Second. Moved by Perkowski, second by White. questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 2, I recommend approval to ratify the approval for Joe DeRaymond to assist with the scheduling, student scheduling at a rate of $50 per hour.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Allen. Any questions?
Where will this be occurring?
This is a ratification. We used Mr. DeRaymond this summer, Mrs. Sheriff, for scheduling on the middle school level because of introducing the new program of studies. We wanted somebody with that level of experience to work with us. It was approximately $800 worth of expenditure.
Okay, so this is for services
Yes.
already
Yes,
given
with
over
the
summer.
transition from Dr. Venema
Okay.
going back to the middle school, we didn't catch that expenditure, and we're coming back on a ratification request.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
If you could please return to page BA1, at the bottom of the page, please. I recommend approval of the waiver of tuition for the students whose names are on file in the Office of Special Education and Student Services in accordance with Board Policy 5118.
So moved.
Moved by White, second by Kukowski. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA2, please. I recommend the approval to add Dr. Alan S. Cohen to the list of medical examiners for the current school year.
So moved.
Moved by Kukowski, second by Shear. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4C, I recommend the approval for the community education part-time staff as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? I have a question on the aides. Do we discriminate, or discriminate's not the right word, do we have different pay scales for different aides? I think we talked about this before in middle school for the subjects they teach, or for elementary school, depending on the subjects. That's the way it's broken out?
No, it's not content oriented. Are you talking about like the lunchroom aides and people like that?
No, teaching aides, or this is not part of that?
This is community education.
Education.
This is all reimbursed, this is all reimbursed through the community education tuitions, correct? Fine.
That's on another part.
That's, yes.
Another question, okay. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4D, I recommend the approval to establish a Saturday school program for our secondary schools. The cost of the district for 94-95 school year would be not to exceed $9,250, and we would come back in January of this year with an update report for the board.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Whites. Any questions?
Motion to amend?
Second.
Gotta say it.
Specify it.
And then- Okay, what do you want to amend?
Motion is to amend as written, recommend approval to establish a Saturday school program for all secondary schools with a minimum staff-to-student ratio of 1 to 15. I'd like the language included, and then it can follow as written.
Okay, we'll vote first. Is there a second to that amendment? We'll vote first on the amendment and then on the actual motion.
Thank you.
Just discussion on the amendment. How does that, what's the impact of I think Dr. Elko indicated that they were planning a ratio of 1 to 15.
Teacher-to-student ratio of 1 to 15.
Okay, and if I understand the amendment, that means that there could never be, it could never vary from, it has to be 1 to 15 or more.
Minimum, yes.
So if you had 16 students, you had to have 2 teachers.
Correct.
No, my motion is with a minimum staff, not maximum staff to student ratio. In other words, I want to put into the motion the safeguards as it was described to us, that we would have a 1 to 15 student ratio. However, I believe that should be the floor on that staffing level.
I think there should always be 2 people. First of all, there should always be 2 people.
There will always be a
Even if
teacher and
there's 2
administrator.
students, there
So
should be
we're
2
looking at an
adults.
average ratio over time, because if there are 13 students one week, we're going to have a teacher
That's outrageous.
and an administrator there.
You have to have, you can't have
Pardon me?
teachers.
I said that the ratios would be over a period of time, because if, for example, on 1 week you had 13 or 14 students there, we would have a teacher and an administrator there. We would have 2 people there in the event of a problem for a safety issue. We wouldn't want 1 teacher there alone or 1 administrator. If there was a fight that broke out, you really need 2 people there so that 1 person can attend to the larger group of students and deal with the 2 students. If it becomes violent, you need to notify the police or what have you. So that would interfere with the ratio. If the board wishes to modify the ratio beyond what I explained to you, then I will withdraw the recommendation and allow the board to make its own recommendation so that the responsibility on the safety of those students rests with the board, not the administration. Our recommendation is 1-to-15 ratio.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
A 1-to-15 ratio to be maintained. I
Overall.
would like to say that we talk about the students in ISS like they're convicted felons.
No.
These students are sitting in our classrooms Monday through Friday. They're coming out of classrooms where teachers are actually being charged with teaching an entire class,
Mrs. Sher,
a
no one-
curriculum of 26, 27, 28 students. So what I'm saying is that while we're looking at a responsible way of reprimanding students, we have to maintain some fiscal responsibility here also. Bill can say, well, we should always have 2, even if there's only 2 children.
No.
I'm saying, excuse me, that is $229 of taxpayer funding being directed right there for those 2 students to be punished. And we have other needs inside the school district where that money could be very well placed.
I'd like to
And
comment
so
on.
I am concerned that we do maintain that, and the funding that's here, as I was figuring out the averages of 7 per school, I personally do not see the need for an intimate atmosphere, for Penfield to have its own teacher for 7 students, or Pembroke to have its, or for Penndale. And that's how it was presented to us. I do appreciate what you've done in reducing the cost, Dr. Elko.
May I respond to
do.
some of your points?
And I just
Please.
could not understand the rationale.
Okay. Several points I'd like to make in response to your remarks. First, no one has accused or described these youngsters in any way to say that they're like felons. By and large, they're students that have created a problem. It may have been a minor problem. It may be a more significant problem. It is possible that they could act out. Some of them are in there because of behavior. Obviously, all of them are in there because of behavior problems. So I want to set the record straight about calling youngsters felons.
No, I'm saying it wouldn't make it
Secondly,
sound. I'm sorry, I didn't say you did.
Secondly, the ratios that we want to maintain, I would bring back to you the actual staffing that occurred between now and January. If you feel the staffing is inappropriate, then cancel the program or tell us otherwise. But we can't sit here and tell you the number of students that are going to appear on any given Saturday. So you have to allow us to at least try to use some judgment and discretion. When we run in-school suspension during the school year, the numbers fluctuate day to day. We have other staff in the building that can be called at a moment's notice to deal with the problem. On a Saturday morning, we don't. And so we do believe that we need some people there and an extra hand, at least the assistant principal. If there are 2 people or 3 people, I would expect that our administrators would make the kind of judgment that would say we'd have 1 person there to deal with that kind of a number. As we start to get higher, then we would need 2 people there. So.
But
I don't
you
know-
were
I don't know
recommending
how-
a student-to-staff ratio. I understood that you did recommend a staff teacher-to-student ratio of 1-to-15.
That's the average
How
that
are
we're
you-
going to try to maintain. That's
But
going
you
to be
have
our goal.
difficulty with the number being put a part of the board's motion.
Because each Saturday, then, you know, we're going to have to make judgments about that.
Vicki, I would even have a problem the way it was exactly worded. A minimum staff ratio would mean that if there were 14 students, Mr. Feely would be there alone. If there were 16, there would be 2.
No, it's a minimum ratio. If your minimum ratio is 1-to-15, that is saying that you are not going to have a staff member for 6 students. It does not say that you can't have a staff member for 20 students. We have our guidelines inside our
It
classrooms.
works both ways. You are setting an absolute guideline by putting it in the motion. If there's 16,
And I
you're
would like a
required to
guideline in
put
the
2 in. If there are 16,
this language requires us to put 2 teachers there. It's in here, 1 to 15. If it's 16, it's 2. It
With a
works
minimum?
both ways.
The word minimum does not
What they
clarify.
need is the
Mr. Potash?
flexibility to be able to staff flexibly.
Yeah.
14, 15, 16, 2, 3, 4. If you say 1 to 15 and it goes to 16, we must put another teacher in that classroom. The language is there, it's part of the motion.
The word minimum does.
You asked me the question, suppose you have less than 15. Does that mean you will not schedule it that day because there's less than 15? You can't tie their hands. With Dr.
Well, I would have difficulty when we're talking
He has your
about
message.
20.
You can adopt this policy, but I think you've made it clear to the superintendent what your message is. And he has to have the flexibility of making that a feasible and not overly costly item.
You will
But it's
also
gonna be
see
an
in
average.
January the actual staffing and the numbers. Look it over. If you don't like it, tell us something different or
Absolutely.
can the program. That's
It
your
will be,
prerogative.
as we see the reviews, then unlike last budget year when the funding was placed in the budget, but we didn't know the program was going to exist until it came forward, it will be something to be reviewed, only in that I hear parents and complaining about other aspects, about wanting aids for students, for student classrooms that they feel are larger than they should be, and many other competing needs that are going on in the regular instructional classroom. And I believe that there can only be so much that we can do on this. And the staffing levels were were just so strong to me that when we talked about 5 staff members at that cost level, in the original presentation, it does make me nervous on how much we're going to give into
I appreciate
these.
that. And I think that the administration came forward with an idea to keep kids in class during the week and still maintain the discipline in the system. If you feel that it is too expensive or not a priority, then vote no for it. That'd be fine.
Mr. Chair, I took your amendment to ensure that the administrator on duty that day would be a part of the count.
That's
how
correct.
Okay, and that's what I can appreciate in your amendment. Where I have a little bit of a concern in just listening to the discussion here tonight is that I know we follow certain DPW regulations in the after-school program. Even though that we don't own that, we provide for it. And DPW expects, with a staff-student ratio, that 2 remain to the end of the day. In the event that there be an emergency or an altercation, somebody has to go to the emergency, attend to the emergency, the other must call. That just triggered off a red flag in my mind. I mean, I don't want to pay 2 people to stay there with 1 kid to the end of the day, but then again, I don't want to take a risk in an emergency situation that could boil over into unnecessary litigation or something. But if we were to hold it at, we've got a pledge, a verbal pledge for 15, and I'm expecting some fiduciary responsibility out of the administrators that are on to hold to that pledge. But if we make it a restrictive 15 and they choose to provide the letter of our policy, we're going to have 2 of them with 16 there. Oh, you said 15, there's 16 here today, we got 2 on staff. If that flexibility and the reasonableness is there with their understanding that their budget's going to be looked at again in the spring, I would think the good sense is there to be careful with and not to be flagrant.
I understand the
with that
safety
expense.
issues. Mr. Weir, what is the percentage of our use at the high school on Saturdays? Of utilization, how many Saturdays? Is it not that our high school is occupied and active for most Saturdays throughout the school year?
I would say that there is always activity at the high school on Saturday, minimally during the morning and often throughout the day.
I think that could be a consideration too as to why we would choose a traditionally isolated school when there is one that would be opened up and active, which would provide
Mr.
some
Feely is an
security
assistant
there.
principal at Pembroke. He is going to open the school, close the school. He knows the facility well.
Okay.
You know, at this point, we're making a recommendation for the program. I don't even know if we will be able to staff it effectively. It remains to be seen. I think if we continue to debate the actual numbers and the method for staffing, we're going to have staff members that are going to say, I don't want to have any responsibility coming in on a Saturday doing that. And I think that, as Mrs. Mengel indicated, I think a little bit of flexibility, and you will see the actual staffing and the number of students served in January. That's
Okay.
October, November, December, 3 full months of operation. You can make a decision whether we are overstaffing, understaffing, or appropriately staffing.
Everything comes back at budget time.
Mine was
I would just,
It will come back-
if
it
we're
will
just a
come
little
back
too
before budget
heavy-handed and
time.
rigid, they're going to do the same back to
to
us.
incorporate the language of the memo that we received, and I felt that it should be a part. And as you say, it was a verbal pledge, but you prefer for it to not to be in the language of the motions.
Mr. Chair, you have a motion on the table to amend the original motion. We'll vote on that first if there's no other discussion, and then we'll vote on the original motion. So is there any other discussion on Mrs. Shear's motion amendment? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Withdrew the motion, I'm sorry. Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, the amendment does not carry. Now we'll vote on the original motion. Is there any other discussion on the original motion?
Question. Mr. Philly mentioned a salary for the administrator at $30 an hour. Do we normally pay administrators beyond their normal work schedule?
We'll pay administrators, for example, for summer school and other types of unique situations.
But it's classified as a stipend?
I'm not sure for
I
the
don't wanna
summer
set a
school whether it's, I
precedent.
believe there's an hourly rate for summer school, and this is consistent with that.
Does not exceed a certain amount.
I just wouldn't want to set a precedent that whenever administrators, and nothing against administrators, but to me, they're considered management. And management is usually paid a salary and not paid overtime. We're contracted with our professional staff. But the administrators, I just don't want to start something new by paying them. I know it's an extra day in the week, and it's above and beyond
Yes.
a Monday through Friday.
So there's a fairness component in that.
Right,
A person
and-
who's
and
worked
that's
for
why-
the 40-some hours, and then they're going to work Saturday morning.
Right, that's why I'm not totally against paying him, but I don't want to set a precedent that we pay everybody that comes in to work on Saturday. I just
we
I just
don't.
want to point.
We don't. There's some people that Saturday work is part of their job description. For example, our athletic director is hired under the express notion that they're going to work Saturdays, part of their
Right.
responsibilities. So they accept the job with those
Right.
responsibilities. An assistant principal doesn't accept the job with the notion that they're going to work Saturdays.
I know, I just want
Terry, I had problems with that too, but I felt better in seeing the administration come forward with placing the administrator as part of the count of being directly responsible to the students as opposed to just being in the building. It better explained the role and the expectation of that member, but at the same time, we do have other faculty members that work on Saturdays and whatnot. Ardwood is a good example, so is John Strobel, of people who have worked through snowstorms, through snow plowing, through 2 elementary schools, blah, 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 and to the best of my knowledge, there's been no additional pay for that, nor would I prove it. But by making the administrator take part in the responsibility and on the same level as a teacher, I felt better about that, and making him part of the account and accountable.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4E, I recommend the approval of the implementation of a pilot program to place video cameras on buses.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Engel. Any questions? Discussion?
Bill, just a question on the policy. I know you did address one of Mr. McNeil's concerns and did say that we would be working with Mr. Potash to develop a policy.
That's correct.
Will the policy be able to be in place prior to the pilot program, since we will be dealing with those issues?
We already have it sketched out.
We have
Mr.
it
Potash
sketched
has to
out.
Look at it.
And before they're actually installed?
Yes, ma'am.
We'll go with it. Have you
I have a
looked?
question about that, Bill, and
Guide,
Mrs. Shear's
I would
question.
refer to them as guidelines.
Yeah,
The board needs
is it
to
a
adopt.
policy that the board adopts, which are specific things that have to have 2 readings at meetings, or is it a procedure that we can all look at so that we're ensured that the students are protected, and the fact that, you know, that
The
everything is
district's
going to be done above board and...
That is what I was proposing, and that, I believe, is what Mrs. Scher was
We can make that as
referring to.
part of administrative regulations.
We can.
Okay.
Is there a policy now that addresses it?
No.
We
No,
need a
there isn't.
policy. Another question?
How does the board wish that we handle that specific program? Do we want to develop some guidelines for the pilot program, which we can review, and then when you come back to us with the information on the pilot program, we look at the procedures at that point and make that into an administrative regulation? Is that the board's wishes?
I think we should if Charlie has the opportunity through many of the other school districts that he does represent, or that he can make contact with some of those that have had to work out the kinks in those, might be an excellent way to begin. Because I don't even know of all the issues that can come up on something like this.
We have cameras. For example, Norristown has cameras, and there's reasons for it, and it works out pretty well. The idea of a pilot is basically to study it and see how it will work before you adopt the policy. So what you're attempting to do is give authorization to implement a pilot program and before you adopt the policy. And then by the time you have a policy to consider, you will have an opportunity to review how effective it was.
Could you get a clarification, board policy versus administrative regulation versus guidelines? Can we have a very quick explanation?
Well, if you're going to spend money, you've got to have board authorization. If this pilot program, for example, means purchasing X number of cameras, or leasing X number of cameras, and spending the money, you're going to have to have authorization to do so. Otherwise, you can just have an administrative regulation.
Yeah, I don't think that's the question, Charles.
No, we want something in place
I think what we really want to do,
first,
and maybe I can clarify this. If we're going to do this, I think we, as a board, all want to see what the procedures are going to be.
That's true.
To do that. Is that
Yes,
absolutely. Am I hearing what you're saying? Great. So if we can have that before we install any buses or any.
That was our intent.
We'll all look at it.
Not a formal board policy.
Right, we'll go back, we'll look at that, and then when we actually review the procedures for doing it fleet-wide, at that point, then we'll look at discussion of whether we want to make those guidelines, regulations, or policy, or, what's the...
See, otherwise you would really delay it by your policy procedures for 2 readings.
Yes, and that's my question.
You're right.
We can do that informally through the board process to ensure that the rights of the students are maintained and that the things are done correctly. And at that point, then, once we get the feedback on how well the pilot program looks, we'll also evaluate whether those procedures that were in place are sufficient, and we can decide what to do at that point. Correct. Is that, we all in agreement on that? Great.
President Bowman, the only aspect of this entire program I have any qualms about whatsoever is that actual tape with Johnny X being a hyena, a fool, or otherwise. What are we, this district, going to do with that tape? Because that tape is going to determine how we elect to punish Johnny X, who sees it, where are we putting it. I think it should be handled like a piece of evidence with the same sort of sacred care as police give evidence, and I haven't heard anything like that. Now, I'm not worried about the privacy in terms of the bus. Like I said at the last meeting, if you're worried about your privacy, your kid better behave. But I do worry about that piece of evidence and how we handle that, and tread carefully with it.
That's what I'm saying, the rights of the students, and make sure they're maintained. And that's going to be in the procedures that we'll look at, how they're going to handle, where the tapes go, who controls them, how they're locked up. Those are the things that Mr. Hartenstein is going to provide to us before we install those on the bus.
I don't know if the visual is the one that's as touchy as the audio. I would think the audio discussions where you may not have necessarily what would be misbehavior, but it's going to be the audio aspects.
Well, both pieces are
of these discussions that are going to be the touchy ones.
In addition to this, I think someone brought it up in the audience, the citizens, I found a good, if we're going to do it for our students, we need to also look during the pilot program what it would take to do it on the rider buses. We have, those are technically not our employees that are driving the rider buses, that are maintaining our contract with them. We need to look out for their rights as well as the rights of students to not have problems. So we need to, at the same time we're evaluating this pilot program on our buses, look at what it's going to take to do that. That's something that Whether the board decides to
won't
do
have
anything or
those
not,
buses.
that's something that we still need to be aware of.
My experience has been, is that it helps identify, if there's a problem on a bus, it helps identify, and that's as far as it goes. Then the normal procedures of the high school principal or the disciplinarian or the assistant high school principal picks it up from there. And it really doesn't become a problem unless somebody just denies that they were ever involved. And then, of course, that might become an issue at a disciplinary hearing. But so far, I have never, in all my experience in dealing with this problem, ever seen a tape presented as evidence. Normally, if they identify the youngster or a couple of youngsters misbehaving on a bus or whatever takes place, and the assistant principal comes in and calls the parents in, he says, look, your son may deny it or your daughter may deny it, but here it is. And that's the end of it. And the tapes aren't kept. I mean, they're just reused all the time. I mean, you don't keep them indefinitely. You see a problem, you address it right away.
And then it's gone.
And then it's gone. The tape is used on something else.
You don't want these things stored.
Well, then
You've got
that
a
should be a
driver.
part of the policy. Then tell us what you're going to do with the
Well,
tape.
and I was going to suggest
The
that
life of
since
the tape.
Norristown does it, perhaps you can contact the folks at Norristown, find out what their procedures are. We don't need to reinvent
And it is not a
the wheel on this
problem.
thing. Let's get it in here and find out. Any other discussion on this one? Great. I think we do have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4F, I recommend the approval to contract for the drug and alcohol testing through the consortium with DrugScan Inc. and DSI Medical Services at the rates indicated on page 11 of the proposal.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Mangle. Any questions?
Question, Bill, do our employees recognize and realize that this is a state mandate and not some onerous task or chore we're putting upon them as a district, but that we are required to do this?
It has been discussed with the Drivers Advisory Committee on a number of occasions, and it's been discussed with the entire driving fleet of drivers on at least 2 occasions. They're well informed.
Okay, so for those that feel that this may be a hassle, that we are not causing this, that it is coming down from the state. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I assume that the rates indicated on page 11 are what was discussed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4G, I recommend approval to apply for the membership in the Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association for Pembroke, Penndale, and Penfield middle schools. The cost for the dues is $50 per school.
So moved.
Moved by Mangle, second by Shear. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4H, I recommend the approval to accept a $37,600 deduct change order in accordance with the contract as approved with Worth & Company, Inc. The original contract was $108,217, and the new contract sum, including this deduct change order, will be $70,617.
Ooh, so moved.
Second.
Vice Chair.
Happy to put my name in
Really?
there.
Who did what to who?
Is there a second?
Second.
I said second.
Oh, by Mangle, I was going to say, you better vote for this one. These are the good news ones.
Well, that
Any
$50
questions?
purchase wasn't too bad.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4I, I recommend acceptance of the gift to the district from the Colt Home and School Association, library books and math materials.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Whites. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We'll take a quick 2-minute recess right now so they can change the videotape. So everybody just please remain in place. Ralph, you have to go real quick. Just so that we can change the tapes in the back room. Okay, Dr. Alco?
Item 4J, I recommend awarding the bids as listed.
So moved.
Moved by Allen, second by Borkowski. Any questions? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA3, please. I recommend the nomination of the professional staff as listed on pages BA3, BA4, and BA5 of this agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Borkowski, second by White. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, new teachers.
Page BA5, please. I recommend the nomination of the support staff as listed on pages BA5 through BA8.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Prokowski. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA8, please. I recommend the professional retirement as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Prokowski, second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3 on BA8, I recommend the board approve the professional and support staff resignations as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Prokowski, second by Allen. Any questions? Just a question for Carol Curley. Do we have a time frame? Is by the end of the year, or
No,
just undetermined until we get a new replacement?
We would expect to be naming a replacement, hopefully, in the board meeting in October for Mrs. Crowley. If not October, November.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 4A, I recommend the contract change as listed.
So moved.
Moved by Reckham, second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA9, I recommend the salary correction as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 6, I recommend the salary change as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Prokowski. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 7, I recommend the extension of the leave of absence as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Mangle. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 8, I recommend the change in the leave of absence as listed.
So moved.
Moved by
Second.
White, second by Prokowski. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
Item 9, I recommend the leave of absence as listed.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by White, second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 10, I recommend the additions, changes, and deletions to the extra duty assignments for 94-95.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Reckham, second by White. Any questions?
Question. When we're under contract, we have to vote for this because we contracted for it. Right? I mean, it's on there, but we have to vote for it. because we
I'll defer to
contracted.
Fred in terms of...
You're asking because we're under the old contract, we have to vote for it?
Normally, when we have a contract, we have to vote for it because we're under contract and it's part of the contract.
Yes.
And it's a technicality that it has to be on here. 'cause we're
We
spending
we
money
are
already.
working under the old contract so that we have the same requirements as we would otherwise.
So we still have to vote for it.
We still do it the same way, absolutely.
Any other questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Page BA10, please, item 11. I recommend approval to establish the extra duty position of assistant volleyball coach at North Penn High School.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by White. Any discussion?
Yes, I have a concern. It's tied with 11 and 12, though. On the motion that's here at this moment, it's an assistant volleyball coach. And then in the next motion to follow, we are also talking about an adjustment from a head coach from a rating of 3 to 5.
That's
so
correct.
basically, I'm seeing a double
Two changes connected with volleyball.
cost impact here between those two. Now, we just approved the listings just last month, was it not? I believe it was at the last action meeting,
There were some, yes.
the bulk of them. And I just have concerns about, on one hand, we're going to elevate the pay and the scale for the head coach because you feel that there's more games and more work. And then at the same time, we're going to also add another layer of assistants
That's correct.
that hasn't been there.
It's difficult for one person to coach two teams simultaneously. If you refer to Green Sheet 11094, we provide an explanation.
Yeah.
What, Warren, what rating is football?
It's going to be a 5.
Is that a 5? Does volleyball warrant a 5?
No, I think it's a 7.
Football's, it's a special case.
Well, there are some, you understand that there is a committee that has been in position for quite a number of years, that it had resulted from negotiations a number of years ago. And that committee had been chaired by Dr. Venema, and that committee meets on a regular basis. The reason you saw some the last time, they were the ones that are ongoing, and the committee has met again and made different recommendations. There is a fairly extensive process used to determine where the people fit, or where the positions fit in, and at what rate of pay they should be given. So that what you see here is a recommendation that comes from a committee that's specifically assigned to make those recommendations to the board.
Fred, can you foresee any spiraling of this? In other words, that when you've elevated one, that you're going to now have others that they're going to say, well, for parity, we're now comparable, and we're a similar sport, so therefore we should be a level, say, 5 also, or even with any of these others that are going to follow here?
I think that's...
or have they?
That's why you see what you see here, because there have been some recommendations made in relation to other positions. But on an ongoing basis, the decisions are made as to whether to add a new position, to change a position, to delete a position. Each year there are a number of positions deleted. And so that you will see this from time to time, where you see changes, where new positions added.
Just keep going.
Are these already budgeted?
They're budgeted.
What is the highest number, coach of a sports?
I think it's 7, Tom. Yeah. And that's your football, basketball. It's male and female, and I think you have
band.
The band is in there.
Do you know what the
maybe football, basketball, wrestling, swimming, and then
Fred,
a couple of girls.
Water polo coach, what group that'll be?
I don't know that.
I think we had that on the green sheet. Was that 5 maybe? Also?
That was last month, and I can't recall, Tom.
Tom, I don't think 5 is the right number. I think probably 3 or something like that.
Assistant football coach is a 5, as I see here on this.
Assistant?
Assistant football coach is a 5.
Any other discussions?
I know assistant swimming is a 4.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
You sound like the Andrews sisters, don't you think?
Yeah. Can we have a roll call vote, Mr. Weir, please?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
Nay.
Mrs. Mengel?
Nay.
Mrs. Prokowski?
Nay.
Mr. Reckcamp?
Yes.
Mrs. Scher?
Nay.
Mr. Weitz?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes.
I have 4 voting yes and 4 voting no.
That's a first.
Motion's defeated. Item K12, I recommend approval of the following extra duty group assignment changes. Jazz band from 2 to 3, drama choreography from 2 to 3, drama club advisor, which is the green room, from 1 to 2, and head volleyball coach from 3 to 5.
Your motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Allen, second by Weitz. Any discussion? All those in favor say
Do we
aye.
have to do these?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
In unison.
Perhaps we should have broken these
Motion
down.
defeated.
Could you have another roll call? I didn't hear a nay from this side on either vote.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Clemens?
Nay.
Ms. Mengel?
Nay.
Mrs. Prokowski?
Nay.
Mr. Reckcamp?
Yes.
Mrs. Scher?
Nay.
Mr. Weitz?
Yes.
Mr. Bowman?
Yes.
Once again, I have 4 voting yes and 4 voting no.
Motion's defeated.
Item 13, I recommend ratification approval of the addition to the 1994 summer custodial maintenance crew, $5.15 per hour, Mr. James Crothamill.
I'll bring it back.
So moved. Second.
Moved by White, second by Shear. Any questions? Mr. Prokowski?
No.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Item K14, I recommend approval of the professional and support staff substitute lists for the 94-95 school year.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Prokowski, second by Redcamp. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstention. Motion carries.
Item 4L, I recommend the student travel as listed.
So moved.
Moved by Mangle,
Second.
second by Whites. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
For information tonight, Mr. Bowman and board members, there is a vandalism report which is attached. I would also like to report that there will be a superintendent's coffee held here at the Educational Services Center next Thursday, the 29th of September, beginning at 4:30 p.m. And I'd also like to report to the board that today is our 10th day enrollment, which is the figure that is used by the PEL as part of their information. I would report to the board that there are 12,068 students in the school district on the 10th day. You won't need to write this down. I'll pass out the sheet to you. From last year's 10th day to this 10th day, last year on the 10th day, we had 11,597 students. So we have an increase of 471 students from 10th day 93 to 10th day 94. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Dr. Rocco.
Mr. Bowman, can I ask a question? And I hope I'm not out of order. I'd like to get back to what the board did on item 11 and 12 and understand what the board wants to do as a result of that. I am on that committee, although I wasn't at this past meeting when these things were done, but all of these things are done in relationship from one to the other, all the different activities. As an example, the volleyball coach would be recommended for the improvement from the one level to the other level based on probably more games or more students. There are a whole number of different criteria that's used to make those judgments. It's not arbitrary. I would assume that as a result of this, that there will have to either be a cutback in terms of the program, or the coach is going to have to make a decision in terms of whether or not they feel that they want to coach. Are you saying that these activities are at a point where you don't want them to improve any more, or you want less games than what is projected? I mean, what's the answer in terms of going back to a committee and saying it was voted down? How would the committee operate from this point on with making any kind of recommendation? Is it too many games? Is it too many kids that are involved that's the problem?
Frankly, Mr. Schmidt, I'm just as clueless as you. I feel that the people that want to play volleyball and go to these other things should have the equal opportunity as all the other ones and have the coaches for them. I'd like an explanation, too, from the board members who voted against it to find out why you didn't feel that volleyball was an important sport in North Penn.
Absolutely not.
Well, that's damn it. That's what it is.
Excuse me.
Mr. Fred, I asked you what the number was for the new water polo coach, and I said I thought it was 5, and I think you said no, you think it's 4.
Yeah, I said I really don't know, but I would guess at 3.
To the best of my recollection, the volleyball also was a club up and when it went full sport, maybe last year, but it just got into full sport.
No.
Okay, it was a club up until a couple years ago.
Since we've been on the board, it's been a sport.
Okay, then I stand corrected. Whatever the case, I thought it was just a club, and now it's a sport. If water polo is the same as volleyball's number of students playing, which I think it is, why are we paying a volleyball coach more than we pay the water polo coach? That's the reason I go
Because, Tom, what I explained, and obviously I didn't come prepared to defend this tonight because that's not my responsibility, but there are a whole bunch of criteria that are involved. The number of kids, the number of games, the responsibility that you have, the amount of responsibility you have in terms of
Time of
the people
practice.
that come, the length of practices, the Saturday practices. There's a whole bunch of things that are involved there. And unless you look at that whole sheet or the comparison of the one to the other, I couldn't give you that answer. But I know before any recommendations are made that form is completed, and then recommendations are based upon that criteria. So that if the recommendation here is for volleyball from 3 to 5, and last time it was for water polo to 3, there's a distinct difference between the two activities. That's an assumption that can be made, because that's the way that the program is set up.
It is my fault and responsibility as filling in as Director of Secondary Education to provide the board with all of the information you need. Frankly, I don't have the answers to those questions. I didn't anticipate the level of concern about those particular activities, or I would have had the advisors and the coaches or Dr. Vaughn or Doc Ryan present tonight. What we will do is bring the information back.
It's just not Dr. Vaughn, it's district-wide, it's other buildings as well.
And we will bring back additional information in October to see if the board, with the additional information, would change their opinion. And if not...
Well, you know, excuse me, Dr. Algo, I guess maybe this was an exercise, maybe a good civic exercise. I think Fred hit the word on the head, and he said assume. An assumption was made, and I think far too many times the assumption is made that yes vote can be had out of this board, and I think that has to cease. Now, every month we're getting, Dick, you can get as bent out of shape as you want, okay? Because you have the right to laugh, and we got the right to vote no.
Absolutely.
And your laughing only makes people dig in, and we're tired of being laughed at. Now, I'm tired of month after month after month these unwielding requests for more and more and more and more. It almost makes a mockery out of our budget process when we're told X amount of money is going to be spent on this and this and this, but all through the year just chips away at more and more and more and more. Maybe if we get more information, we can make better decisions. And I think it's awfully interesting in the 3 years that I've been here, we don't get the information we really, really need until we start saying no.
We don't ask for the information
exactly
before we come to this meeting.
We don't always know what to ask for because the full disclosure isn't here.
If you can read this at a board meeting, you can ask a question, you can read it before you come to the board meeting and ask them, and you'll get every answer you want when every piece of information is in front of every one of these administrators. The homework is not done in advance. You leave it for the public to hear these questions, and rather than express a concern based on information...
We're supposed to do it in public. We're not supposed to be making private phone calls.
You're supposed to do your homework before you get here. How can they be prepared if you don't ask the questions in advance?
Well, they better assume the worst.
They better start assuming the worst.
Now you're asking them to assume, and you should have...
That they better come with a full plan. And total and complete accountability whenever it regards money, and don't ever assume that it's going to fly by.
Well, this is the third time.
And I'm not going to be chastised for no difference.
This is at least the third time that Fred has explained the committee that reviews the extra duty activities.
It's always a committee that there's always someone behind closed doors doing all this work, so we can't relate to the voters don't know how we got the second high school.
And Dick, I want it on the public record that I take offense at you calling us stupid. Don't ever do it again.
I said it was stupid that we voted against it when all your...
You called the president.
No, I said that was, to me, it was improper on your part to not ask the questions. I asked the questions last week about how many kids do we have playing volleyball.
Don't wait for me to ask
I didn't hear
questions
anybody ask that
doors.
question
I will
tonight.
use a public forum whenever I wish.
Dick?
I already had that
And for 2 years I sat up here and been voted down on everything from programs to trash can liners, and I never once called the majority of the board stupid, nor will you ever catch me doing it for the rest of the balance of my term. I resent the minority of the board being called stupid, and I wish you do not do that again.
To explain my point, Dick, in a very aggressive way, you did challenge us as to why we would do this because you felt it was so ridiculous. We're sitting here and we are getting a twofold increase in the staffing for volleyball, and we are going from a 3 to a 5. I personally am wondering how much more is going to unfold out of the budget that we were told we had to take charge of, we had to be responsible for cutting it, when we were saying The district is the only one who really knows the full scope of the new spending in there. None of the things that are coming forward were a part of David's list or a part of the administration's list of what was creating the 18 mil increase. But if it's new spending and it's in that budget, it had to play a role. So when we voted against that budget, I think each one of us had a mandate to follow through during the course of this year and demonstrate to the public that it wasn't just a political vote. Oh yeah, it's easy to vote against something, then everything that comes before you, you just support with a new vote. You're never really having to take a line. Well, when I did that vote on that budget, I said there were going to have to be places throughout this year where I followed up on actually taking a stand on politically incorrect issues to back it up. And one of them is extra duty pay that's over $300,000 and some in this budget for extracurricular overtime on staff. And somewhere we have to say stop. And, you know, all these emotions are going because of your negative reaction. Well, sometimes
That's
you
exactly
lose some.
right.
It isn't so difficult once you get used to it like us.
My opinion is that with the number of students that we have that want to play volleyball, that it warrants 2 coaches. If you don't think that that's warranted, fine, that's your opinion. I think it's irresponsible to vote it down because you don't want him to go from a 3 to a 5. Why don't you amend the vote or the motion, which you can do, to say, I only want him to go to a 4.
It's now in Fred's court. He can now go back and say, well, where's the compromise going to be? Is it going to be your assistant coach, or would you rather have your level 5? Would you rather remain at your level 3, or would you rather have your assistant coach?
It's not the coach's call on that.
Well, his committee may want to reconsider both options.
Let me take myself out of this for a minute, because it's not my committee. And I interfered only for the purpose of trying to set some clarity.
Didn't work, did it?
It did not work, and I guess if it's time to be offended, maybe as administrators, we should be offended as well. It gets a little tiresome hearing all the time that we're not prepared and we can't answer questions. We do our darndest. We answer questions, and Vicki, you know yourself, because you spend hours a day on the phone here. We do the best. We do the best we can.
Excuse me?
If you want us to be able to be prepared to answer some questions, tell us what the question is. I mean, how do we go back, and that was my point at the very beginning, do we just scrap the whole system that we've had in place for years because the answer was no? Or is there a problem here that we need to work on? If you're saying that 4 of you lost when you voted against the budget, then everything that comes up is going to be voted out whenever there's 4 here. I mean, administratively, that's tough to deal with. How do we deal with 4 boards all the time? How do we do things that are fair and equitable to the jobs that we're supposed to be doing, to the people that we're supposed to be working with and for, and the kids that are involved in these kinds of things? I mean, we can eliminate the whole extra duty thing if that's what you want.
Mr. Schmidt, I don't think our voting pattern has been so tough as what you're alluding to. Secondly, I have to say that you made a comment that I've spent hours on the phone with this administration. And I would ask...
I did make that comment, yes, I did.
I would like to ask of the members of this cabinet, who has spent hours in a week on the phone with me?
I'm going to
at
ask,
any
I'm
one
going to
time.
ask that that's not going to serve any useful purpose.
No, excuse me, but you put something out on the record, you make statements. The political thing to do is get up on a grandstand, you say something strong enough and everyone believes it. Well, I am tired of those sort of comments also being put out for the benefit of this camera to cast images. And it's just not true. If I speak with anyone, to any degree, it's Dennis. And Dennis does not have me constantly on the phone to him. I will speak with him in a friendly way where it's not just, Dennis, get me this, da, 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 da. I say, hi, how you doing? How's everything going? Is your dad feeling okay? But I do not spend hours, Fred, with anyone here. I'm still waiting for a return call just on who's on the negotiating team from 3 days ago. This is personal. I just take offense at bringing it into this public meeting to actually mean something as far as the issue at hand. It's getting very petty here.
Am I understanding what I'm hearing, that some of the board members would like to be more involved in the day-to-day goings-on of the school district administration?
You took a
And
vote.
Therefore, no, I'm listening to what you say, that we get presented things, and who are these committees? Do you want to be on them? Do you want to be invited? Does anybody want to be in here on every committee so that there's a board
Bill,
member present?
Bill, I am
Is that
not-
what you're saying? That's what it sounds like.
No, we're not. Bill, everybody has to stop assuming what each person's vote's going to be. And
That's
I
not what I'm
believe,
saying.
Bill.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's not what he's saying at all.
All right.
I'm asking, do we want to get more involved with the day-to-day runnings of the school district? Because that's what I think I'm hearing.
No, I'm trying to tell you that's not what you're hearing. What you're hearing is we do not wish assumptions to be made on who's going to vote for what. 2, assumptions shouldn't be made that we have to call behind closed doors to ask questions. If we wish to use a public forum, we will do so and not be chastised for it. 3rd, I'm willing to change my vote if the administration will come forward and do a better sales job with what they wish at the next meeting. And don't expect me to come up with all the right questions, because I'm not here all day long for $90,000 a year. I don't have always the right question. Okay?
I understand what you're saying, but we get it.
It sold to me better with more information so I can get a comfort level. I don't want to have to sit home and create the right questions or guess the right ones when I'm not here all week to do that.
Well, I've heard people say, we don't know what's going on. We don't know about these committees. Am I assuming from that some people want to be on it?
If I get more
That's what I'm
information,
asking.
I will choose,
what I'm
I'd be
asking.
willing to change my vote at the next meeting if more information is brought forward.
Thank you, Mrs. Mengel and Mr. Allen. I'd like to read, just for the record, what was provided to the board on the green sheet on the 16th of September.
I think it's in the
Head volleyball coach. From 1975 to 1986, volleyball was considered a club sport. The team's only competition was the District 1 tournament held on the first Saturday of May. This team practiced several afternoons per week during April and the first week of May in preparation for the tournament. There was a varsity team consisting of 10 to 12 players. Since 1987, volleyball has been an official sport competing in the Suburban 1 League. There are 24 players divided between varsity and junior varsity teams. The current level is 3. The level 5 is requested because it's consistent with the head coaches of baseball, lacrosse, softball, tennis, boys and girls track. The length of the season, number of contests, and the end of the regular season are comparable. All spring sports begin practice on the first Monday of March, with the regular season ending at the end of the second full week of May. The volleyball team has 18 contests a year. That's what we were provided. In my estimation, that is sufficient information to vote on this. If you people felt that that was not enough, you should have called the administration to ask for additional information.
Mine isn't a matter of lack of information. It's on the agenda, by the way. Everyone out there has that. Anyone that knows how to read can read it a second time for themselves. The issue was with me, and everyone may have had a different reason, Dick. Everyone may have had a different reason. Mine is that I feel like extra duty is spiraling. It's getting out of hand. We're talking about a second high school. We're going to be faced with a future decision of whether we are duplicating or deleting. And once we've elevated, we keep moving further and further with this, and no one's yet quite sure how we're going to be able to incorporate all these new additional costs that we're still building with having to double it for another school. And we are going, once you've moved it up, you're not going to be able to reel it back down simply because you have 2 of them. So I think that we have to keep that all in mind. It's not anything against volleyball. I support the sport. It's the level of pay.
Mr. Bowman,
and the extra duty.
volleyball is the only thing I can play, so it's not against volleyball. If football had been up here, it would have been football, I think, because it's just time to stop. Mr. Scherer is right, it is spiraling. I was planning on voting for it when I came in here, so why would I have called to get more information? I had information, but after the discussion and things that came to mind during the discussion, it's just time to stop.
I'd like to know what changed your mind in the discussion. I don't understand.
The workings of my brain.
I'd like to get on with the agenda.
Yes, please.
Is there recommended for approval of the exemption and waiver of taxes on partial 46-00-01689-14-6 and 4600-01004-34-5 acquired by Montgomery Township for open space?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Reckkamp, second by Allen. Any questions?
What street are they on? No.
The first parcel, Mr. Kwiatkowski, is on Kelsey Drive, and the second parcel is on Grays Lane.
That was in that.
Very good.
Yeah, Kelsey Drive and Grays Lane, as it says right there.
Is that
All those in
Allen?
favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Is there a recommendation, there's a recommendation for approval of the waiver of the 1994-95 taxes on parcels acquired by Hatfield Township for public use.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Redcamp, second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Treasurer's report, Mr. Kelly.
We've had cash receipts for the month of August in the amount of $36,144,877.54. Receipts year-to-date, $40,436,103.77. Disbursements for the month were $3,236,240.21. Disbursements year-to-date, $6,244,489.24. We have current investments in the amount of $37,503,445.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any questions on the treasurer's report? Approval of invoices from the general fund, Mr. Kelly.
I recommend approval of the sanctioned checks listed in the amount of $4,384,793.26, and the disbursements for the month of September in the amount of $795,754.30.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Redcamp, second by Allen. Any questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Federal programs, Mr. Keffer.
No report.
Solicitor's report, Mr.
No report.
Mr. Cornish, thank you. There was an executive session held this evening at 7:30 to discuss personnel matters. Any other items?
Adjourned.
We're adjourned. Thank you. Good evening.